Hello, welcome to another episode of Genealogy Quick Start. Yes, we do have two new quick starts for you. I'm Shamel Jordan, your host. As you know, Genealogy Quick Start is available on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, we are a Philly Cam show. Thank you so much for being here with us. You know, regardless to whether you are watching us live or in recording, please let us know where you are. And of course, let us know your genealogy group. And what are our quick starts this week? We, of course, have two new ones. One is a 4 keys, and we are going to learn how there were 4 key ways that Michael John Neill was able to learn about his ancestor, Sarah Tinsley Sledd of Bourbon, Nicholas County, Kentucky. And then this is so exciting. I have a special guest on here. I've known Aaron forever. Do you know Aaron Goodwin? He does amazing work. He writes up all these wonderful things. This is what I appreciate about Aaron. Not only does he do the research, he writes it up so that it is available for, posterity, that people can go back and get access to this. We all need to do more writing. And what Aaron is going to talk to us about today is identifying a pre-emancipation family. So this is one that I'm definitely looking forward to because it has one of my favorite all-time record sets, the Freedmen's Bureau records. Are you using the Freedmen's Bureau records? Well, Aaron's going to show you how life-changing these records can be for your research. So I know you're waiting. You're like, Shamel, bring on the guys, Enough of all of this. Your favorite buddies and mine. First up, columnist and editor, James M. BEIDLER. Are you there, Jim?
Yep.
Hello, Jim. And genealogy tip of the day, Michael John Neill. How are you two today?
Just fine.
Good. We're good.
So, Michael, I didn't know you had ancestry in Bourbon County, Kentucky.
Yes, I do. A couple families, as a matter of fact, because, well, my third great grandparents were second cousins, but we're not going to have that discussion today.
No, now we know what's going on. We understand.
No, I just the
Fingers
Sarah
and
that
toe
we're
check.
we'll do that later. The Sarah that we're gonna talk about, I descend from her brother also, who also migrated. He also migrated. They were from Virginia. He also migrated into the same area of Kentucky that his sister did. Which
So
is
you
partially
come
how their
from two
grandchildren married.
siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So you come from 2 siblings.
Yes.
Interesting. Jim, you have stuff like that going on in your lineage? Your
Oh, absolutely.
He's going to do his toe check later. Yeah, we're all good.
Oh, that's what he said, toe check.
Yeah.
Cool. So you started talking about your ancestor, Sarah. And so tell us a little bit more about Sarah.
Well, I've got to be careful. I was fuzzy there for a minute. Sarah was originally born. That's a phrase you don't want to use. Sarah was born in Amherst County, Virginia, probably late 1770s or so. And she married there and then migrated with her as a young couple to Bourbon County, Kentucky. And we're going to see how there were some issues with they did not move, but the county line moved and some things like that. And she was atypical and typical in some ways, atypical in other ways that I wouldn't say made her hard to research, but just some things we might not expect of people. And when I first worked on her, I did not know that Sally was a diminutive for Sarah. I do today, so we don't need to have lots and lots of comments about it. But
Hey,
when I first
didn't
started
know
this,
that. I didn't know that. And I have Christine Rose's book, but I could have
Well,
pulled it off the shelf and looked.
you should have had an ancestor named Sarah Sledd. Then you would have. Um, but when you do Google searches for sleds, let me tell you, it's a challenge because you get a lot of things. Because sometimes it only gets spelled with one D in the records, and when you search for SLED, you obviously get a lot of
Uh,
a
a lot of sleds.
Yeah, a lot of sleds. Yeah, it's a downhill slope when you're working on
I
it.
was
Let me
waiting
tell
for
you,
the joke. I figured it was an easy one.
it was. It
one.
was.
Well, we have to say hello to Renata. Renata, thank you so much for saying hi. She is multitasking, but listening in. Renata is one of our former special guests. I see there's more of you out there. Please let us know where you are. And if you'd like your genealogy group, thank you. Everyone's probably multitasking. Like Jim. I think Jim is multitasking too. So, Michael, we're going to move to your 4 keys for one ancestral branch. And I love that you're doing a female. And I love that you're bringing out some interesting things that we might assume, right, about different aspects of what it was to be a widow back in the day. So what are Sarah's kind of like her dash? What's her birth kind of death year about?
She died after 1850. I don't know when she died. She died in one of those states that didn't keep vital records when she died. So there's not, we have a last alive date. So if you can believe what date the census taker took the census on, she was there. And we'll see the enumeration. It's really difficult to read, but we'll see that. And I don't know when she was born either, because she was born in Virginia in the late 18th century, and no records. And if they didn't put things in a Bible, even if they did put things in a Bible, the problem with that is it has to get passed down, not get burned, not get put in the garbage, all those kinds of things to the present day. And if it was written somewhere in a Bible, that is no longer extant or is still buried in somebody's attic somewhere. So, all we have are approximations. I know when she got married, because we'll see a copy of the part of the marriage record. And there's an actual additional tip too about her. I'm going to write it down so I don't forget it. That was not one of the 4.
Oh, we're going to get 2 bonuses.
We're going to get a bonus. Yeah, because I just thought about something that I learned. It was many years of my research many years ago when I learned this, but we'll talk about that too in terms of the marriage record that there is for Sarah.
I love how you said that last alive date. I'm going to use that. Let's see, we have Valerie Ann. Hello, Valerie Ann. And we have Jean here. Welcome, ladies. So let's go ahead and jump in for our 4 keys on one branch for Sarah Tinsley Sledd of Bourbon, Nicholas County, Kentucky. So key number 1 for Sarah is that for you, compilations are not always correct. Can you describe what you mean when you say compilations, and why aren't they correct? Aren't all genealogy books right?
It's a fancy word for online trees too. It falls into that same category. There are sources and sites that claim she died before 1850, and she's clearly alive in the 1850 census. But there are some sites where if you look, it says she died much earlier than that. Part of that may be, I think, if I had to have to look, I think 1840 she's not listed because I think she's with the same son that she's with in 1850. And of course, in 1840, since she's not the head of the household, she's just hidden in one of those tally marks. But in 1850, because everybody's named, she's listed there. But it's one of these things that somebody got it in their head. She died in whatever before 1850 at some point, and it just got passed on. And it can be hard to fight those errors sometimes once they really start and once they get on the sled and start going downhill, it can be really hard to stop them.
Like a game of rumor or telephone. Yeah,
exactly. And it's not like spring will come and the snow's melted and the sled can't run. It just keeps right on rumor just keeps right on
Just
going.
keeps on going. I know an example.
Just like that
Uh-huh.
bad joke just keeps right on sliding through there.
I've seen that on trees and in real life. So I definitely know what you're talking about. All right. So use those compilations as
Right.
hints, not as, facts. Check them out.
Absolutely.
I love it. All right. That's key number 1. Key number 2 is county boundaries change over time. This sounds like the Mexicans. I didn't cross the border crossed me.
That's
Is that
about
what's going on with Sarah?
in this case. That's what happens, and we'll see it as one of the examples when we talk about that one partition deed. But we talk about thinking about county boundaries in the frontier days when counties are carved out of earlier counties and they're broken up into smaller ones and those kinds of things. And that's an important thing to be aware of in that time period. But even after the counties are pretty much formed, sometimes for a variety of reasons, the county boundary will be tweaked. And we've got the illustration that will show how that happened. It wasn't a major change in terms of the geography, but it's like a lot of things. If it affects you, it affects you, no matter how many people, that's common sense, but sometimes people don't have any of that. And, it, in this case, when that happened, it popped them over into a different county, and the change wasn't that much. The geography wasn't that much acreage, but it was enough that some people got moved over, and her farm was one of those.
Okay, we will see that on your cool graphic. And then key number 3 is small things matter.
I'm trying to remember what I thought about with this one, so we'll look at the examples.
We'll look at the
and
example.
We'll see. Yeah, I can't remember because I gave you I had a list because I pulled these from something I did earlier, and we shortened these so that they could fit. And I'm gonna have to look and see what was meant by small things matter, because there was something. Obviously, it was
There's
pretty
a lot
small
of jokes
because
here.
it got it. Well, we do what we can, but it obviously was pretty small because it got cut out. So it just goes to make that point. And I'm pulling that up right now when I wrote about it.
Don't worry about it, Mike. I knew you was trying to talk over it. We'll see it in the slide.
All right.
So
All right. Sounds
key
good.
number 4 is not every fairly young widow remarries. What are you saying? Sarah just said, I'm on my own. I'm okay.
Thomas Thomas died in 1815 when she wasn't a super young widow, but given the age at which she probably married, and she'd been married 15 years when he died, she was still relatively young. And a lot of women at that stage would have remarried, but she did not. And, it could have been they were not well off, but they might have been well off enough to where she didn't have to marry again. They farmed. Her older children were boys, and while they weren't old enough to really run things per se, they'd have been teenagers, early teens. They were old enough probably to do enough farm work that if mother told them what to do, they could, she had manual labor.
Gotcha.
It's kind of what I'm thinking, and enough property to support herself. So she was not. Some women were not in that situation, but apparently she was in a situation where she didn't have to, remarry. And maybe it was just good financial planning on Thomas's part. I don't know.
She had options. I love that.
She had options. Fortunately, yeah.
You have another bonus that deals with widowhood. Bonus is widows may wait to partition the farm. So define partition, why we would assume this automatically.
Right. And Thomas died in 1814, and he owned 150 or 200 acres, something like that. And instead of partition is when it's broken up into pieces for all the heirs to get, if that can be done equitably. And there were 5 children that she and Thomas had. That partition of the farm was not done until 1831, 17 years after Thomas died. And, sometimes people will dream up all kinds of, they must have had fights and squabbles and blah, 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 and all this drama was probably going on. The reality of it is she probably, when he died, had very young children, like 1 or 2 years of age for the youngest one. And legally, it was easier and cheaper to do that partition after all of the children had reached the age of majority. Well, if you've got a 1-year-old, it's going to be a little while before they reach that age of majority. And that is why I'm relatively certain they waited so long to partition it out until all the children were adults. They wouldn't have to go through as much legal work to give them title to their part of the farm. It was just easier to wait.
Yeah. Going up to mess with guardianships. Yeah,
exactly. You know, especially
an excellent
again, a lot of it goes back to the money. If she had needed the money and was in dire straits, then that might have changed it. But if they could work their way through it and wait, it's just cheaper.
All right, let's look at some of these documents you have.
This is a letter of consent for Sarah to marry. This is, I'm not sure if it's signed by her dad, but that's supposed to be her dad's signature there. And this was part of the marriage bonds. And this brings up a good example. When I first started researching these people, it was a long time ago when I was probably in my late teens, early 20s. And I had heard they got married in Amherst County, Virginia in 1798. A relative had told me that. And so I wrote to the county clerk's office, the appropriate office, and requested a copy of the marriage record. I know that's what I requested. And that's what they sent me, because they sent me what I requested. I didn't ask for anything about the bonds, letters of consent, any of that. I asked for the marriage record. So you know what I got? I got the marriage record. And I remember a few years later, I corresponded with someone and they sent me a copy of this. And I said, "Where'd you get it?" And they said, "From the courthouse." I thought, well, that's not what I got when I requested it. But she had known to ask for the marriage bonds and the consents and the other records, because she was aware not every state has these, but Virginia did during this time period. She knew to request them, and so she got them. So it reminds us of the importance of being aware of what records were kept and created at that time and place, to go back to that metaphor again, where our ancestors, you've got to be aware of that. If you're not, there may be things that you don't overlook. Knowledge is power, you know, but when you're aware of the records, you know what to ask for and know what to expect. If it's not extant, it's not extant, and it's been perhaps destroyed or lost, but you've got to at least know that it was there at one point in time to look for it. But this is a really cool document.
I love it.
Umpteenth great ancestor John signed it. There's some witnesses there, one of whom is his, I think one is his son-in-law and one is his son. But here she's referred to as Sally. She's not referred to as Sarah. She's called Sally on this this document. So that it makes me think that's what her dad called her. Her dad called her Sally because that's what's listed in the document.
I don't have enough Sallys and Sarahs and Sallys in my life. This is why I did not know this. Oh, and I wanted to ask you, this consent to marriage, is it like if I were to look for it, would it be amongst marriage records, or would it be amongst court records?
It would be in with the marriage records.
Okay.
Marriage records.
I love this. What is this?
This is a plat of the partition of Thomas's farm. It was partitioned in Nicholas County, which we'll talk about why in a little bit. But there was the verbiage in the court document. I didn't put the verbiage here because Shamel knows we don't like to read, so we like pictures because pictures make it easier. But this is a nice graphic. This is the plat of the property. The widow gets her portion, her third, roughly in kind of the upper part of that, and then the 5 children, their wedges are split up amongst the rest of that. They all don't get, she doesn't get exactly, in terms of acreage, exactly a third. They don't get exactly 2/3 split 5 ways. most likely in part because it's rough, hilly ground in Kentucky, so it's a varying quality. So the size, they tried to give them an equitable third and an equitable 2/3 split 5 ways. So the acreages are going to vary a little bit because it's, varying values to the property there. But I liked the map. The map was really cool.
I
And
love this. Was this amongst the
this was
probate?
this was drawn in the court book. There's a deed that delineates all the meets and bounds descriptions. It says the widow gets this, and it gives the corners and all the lines. Does that for Belinda, William, Thomas, Nelson, and the Nancy. And then there's a map showing how what it's all supposed to look like. What's really cool, when I used a program to plat this out called Deed Mapper,
Yeah.
I discovered that the plat in the book is actually upside down. When I platted it on Deed,
Oh.
it's upside down for whatever reason.
North
He
is south
rotated it.
and
North is
south
south
is
and south
north.
is north. Yeah, it needs to be rotated 180 degrees. But when I
All right,
first
we can.
started to plat it out, I was really confused because it wasn't. And then, he must have just rotated for whatever reason. He rotated it when he put it in when the clerk put it in the record book.
Makes sense. I could talk to you about this for like another 10 minutes, but I can't. Oh, I just wanted to know, like, you said that the widow, so this was a part of the in the will book, because I think it says will.
Will book.
And you said that there's paperwork about the partitioning much later.
No, this was all at the same point in time. But
Oh,
this was in
okay.
1830. I don't have the date on here, but this was from 1831.
Okay. Okay.
And Thomas died in 1814. This was the change in the county boundaries. On the left, you've got the 1810 boundaries, and on the right, you've got the boundaries in 1820. There was a change. Originally, that one line kind of on the eastern part, you see it's a straight line kind of at an angle.
Yeah.
They picked 2 points and said this boundary is a straight line between this point. I'm not sure why I got to move my hands, but I am. Anyway, between this point and that point. And after 10 years, they must have decided this is Kentucky. Ain't no line straight. We need crooked lines everywhere. And so instead of being that arbitrary straight line, they picked 2 points. And a lot of it went along a creek. As you can see,
I was going to say that has to
in
be a
all
creek.
that wiggles. And there's a little of it that is a straight line, but then roughly where that one highway is at today, you can see where it starts to wiggle kind of to the south of that. So that must be where it follows that creek. And so if they lived on that, probably the southern 2/3 of that, then it also tells me they lived really near that creek. Even if it's not mentioned in the meets and bounds description, they must have lived fairly near that creek.
Yes.
So that's
yes.
But I thought that was really kind of a cool boundary change.
Yeah, I love that.
They go to a creek like that. This is the 1850 census for Sarah. This is her last alive date. And this is a large household. This is her son Nelson. I think he's in his 30s. He's got a wife and a bunch of kids. And then he's living the dream. He's got his mother and his mother-in-law and and I think his brother living with him. So that's just a dream right there.
He is living the dream.
Because Sarah's his mother, and the other lady with a different last name, about the same age as Sarah, is his wife's mother. So he's got both of them living with him. And then it was really hard to read. The next one zoomed in a little bit, so we can see Sarah there. She's 73. But there she's Sarah. In a few records in Kentucky, she's Sally, but most of the time she is listed as Sarah. There's probably one or two where she's Sally, but the bulk of them, I think, the majority of them anyway, she's listed as Sarah.
And Sarah with 1D here.
That's Sledd with 1D, yes. And it's, sometimes it's, and it's, that's hard to even see that was Sledd. If you look at that, that's almost hard.
I'm pretty
it's hard to
sure that
read.
the indexing was not correct.
The
It could
first
be.
time, no, when I located this the first time, I can't remember how I found it, but it was tedious because and even if you look at the S's,
They're not the same.
they're not the same. That S in Sarah, the capital S in Sarah, is not the same as that, and they just did that on purpose. Let's make my S 4 different ways, and not quite that. It feels like that, but that's. And that's a point to make about the handwriting. We mentioned that one of our earlier episodes, people's handwriting,
Yes.
and it could, and sometimes it would change from one moment to the next because apparently, he's just making it different for whatever. Just a good reminder. You just don't know what you're going to run into sometimes.
So can we go back to the partition slide? And if anybody has questions, let's ask Michael. So,
Oh, is this the partition slide or the partition sled? Sorry, go ahead.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. So this isn't normal that you would find this. Normally it's described as like a deed in like a land description.
Right. It would just, and the thing is, although it's not uncommon with partitions because they're taking a piece of property, was one piece of property, and they're breaking it up amongst, in this case, 6 people. So this would be an ideal time to have a survey done or a plat drawn out to show just where those boundaries are. You might not always find it in the will book like you do here. In more modern times, you would find a survey record at the county courthouse, perhaps, if that had to be done. But if the thing with partitions are, the judge will send out usually it's 3 men, landowners in the area. He will tell them, this is what I want you to do. Can you split it up a third for the wife and the rest amongst the 5 children equitably? And then they will go out and look at it, and they might say, this is Kentucky. How on God's green earth you split it like that? And then tell the judge, you're just going to have to sell it and split the money. In this case, they didn't do that. They were able to equitably partition it out. But those men, that will be their first task. Can they divide it up? And then if they can, they'll walk it with the surveyor and then have all the lines surveyed out and then a plat drawn up.
So Michael, not to get off track or anything, but I love learning about widows. And so are there any other, what are some of the things that we should think about when we are learning about widows, or how to find out information on what the laws are about them? How do you get more into learning about the females and not making a bunch of assumptions? Because I like how you shared 2 assumptions that not necessarily will happen because they're widows. Can you share any more details about widows?
One thing would be reading state statutes and being aware of women's property rights during the time period in which your people lived. That would probably be the best way to start figuring out some of these things and becoming aware of some of those situations like that.
And state statutes are where? I think Google Books. You talked
Google
about
Books
them
would
being
be
on
the place. There's online directories to those and guides to those, but Google Books would probably be the default way to find those if you can't find them in some other fashion. But keep in mind, a lot of these things, individuals that have a little more money have more options than those that don't.
Gotcha.
That's true. That's true across the board. And I've got other widows that weren't in the quite this financial state, and they married relatively quickly because they needed to do that. Sarah didn't. She wasn't a planter's wife. They didn't have that large of an estate, but it was enough that and the kids were old enough. That makes a difference too. If they'd been younger, or she had a lot of factors are kind of playing into what allowed her to have the capability of making the choices she did.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's look at 4 keys on one branch for Sarah Tinsley Sledd. Key number 1 that Michael brought to light is that compilations are not always correct. Number 2 is that county boundaries can change over time. Number 3 is that small things matter. Sometimes they're so small we don't remember what they were. Number 4, not every fairly young widow remarries. She might have options. And a bonus was widows may wait to partition their farm. Michael, you had written down one other thing. What was that?
That was about the marriage record that we talked about. Making
Cool,
sure
cool,
you were aware
cool.
and entailed.
Jim and Michael, thank you so much. All right, give me 1 second. Now it's time. Thank you for being here. So happy to see you all. We have a very special guest today. If you are looking for, I try to identify pre-emancipation African Americans, Aaron's your guy. He has a really cool method. We've seen methods on TV to go, how did they make that leap? Well, Aaron's not making big leaps. He has some really cool ideas. And it's a methodology that many of us use, but this one, it really just and I can't wait for you to see it and meet Aaron Goodwin. Welcome.
Hi there.
Hello,
How are
Aaron.
you? Good to see
I
you.
am so happy to have you here. Aaron, you do so much great work. One of the things that he's done that I don't know why I'm bringing up here, but you did an amazing job researching Seneca, the African Americans who lived in what we now know as Central Park, New York City. And so look that up, Google him. It's really great. And if you're a member of the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania, he did an amazing presentation on it. So Aaron, I am so happy to have you here. You have so well.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. This is really cool, and I'm so excited about chatting about this with you, and not just presenting, but chatting with you about it. I'm loving that.
So Aaron, before we jump in, and I'm looking forward to jumping in, can you tell and share with us your 1-minute genealogy story, how you got started, and when you knew you were hooked?
That was actually at sort of 2 different points in time. When I was 12, I was lucky enough for my great-grandmother to still be alive. In fact, my great-grandmother was still alive when I moved to New York City as an adult. She lived that long. So I was really lucky. And when I was 12, it was the year after my great-grandfather, her husband, had died. And she put together a family tree of everything that she knew about her and her husband's ancestors and siblings and, blah, blah, blah. I put this on a chart, made it, and then handmade a separate chart for each of her grandchildren. So my mother got her grandchild's copy, and that was the first time it ever occurred to me that my grandparents had parents, or that my grandparents had ever been kids, or any of that. And on this same piece of paper, I'm seeing the earliest birth date for one of their ancestors at the time was 1798. And it just blew my little mind that I had an ancestor who was born in 1798. And this was in 1978 when I was seeing this. I'm a prepubescent, about to be teenager. So I promptly forget my interest in all of this for years. And then I was working at JP Morgan, asset management here in New York City, a place I should never have been. I mean, it's just, what can I say? What can I say? But I was there, and I was starting to try. I was realizing that I shouldn't be there. I'm thinking, okay, now what do I do? I have no clue what I'm going to do. And my memory went back to my great grandmother's family chart, and I thought, well, let me take a couple classes and see. You know, I know that some of the serious people, like, you get into tax records and land records and stuff like that. Oh, I don't want to. I don't know that that's going to be for me. So let me just take a couple classes and see. And then I did, and I was hooked. And then immediately went to a couple of conferences. Immediately, this is where I really got lucky. I was introduced to a lot of people. I stumbled into Michael LeClaire, and we became friends. And if anybody knows Michael LeClaire, he is one of the social butterflies of the field. And he can introduce everybody to everybody. And he did. And he did. And that formed lots of great relationships and mentorships and learning, and then writing and researching and publishing and blah, blah, blah. And now here I am.
I am so glad that you are doing the publishing aspect, because you publish a lot on African Americans. And so I'm very grateful for that.
And I will say this, should be publishing more than I have, and have plans to beef that up in the future.
Yay!
I'll be publishing some more stuff just on my website, not any other places, just, yeah.
Nice. So Aaron, I'm ready for your quick start. Well, thank you for your 1 minute. And Michael is a favorite on here, just so that you know. He is one of our gamers, and he's been one of our champions on Genealogy Quick Start Genealogy game. So we are very familiar with him and all of his antics.
Yeah, he has many.
All right, so let's get going with your quick start, because we have so much to discuss. And it's identifying a pre-emancipation family. And there's, you know, this is what we're all trying to do. And so we can never have too many quick starts on how to do this, because there isn't just one way. There's many different ways, right?
Yep, and we need to consider as many different ways as we possibly can. And, you know, sometimes our ancestors or research subjects' situations will show us new methods, like this did. I didn't think of this method before. I just discovered it because this family had it.
Exactly. So let's talk about this family. So let's get ready to get started with our quick start, identifying pre-emancipation family.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. That's a yes. And hold on, I need to say hi. I try to make sure that I catch up with folks who have come in after we start our first show. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Teddy has shown up. June has shown up from Shaker Heights. Hello, Gary Franklin. And hello, Anita Payne from Tennessee. We have Carol out there in Central Illinois. Hello and welcome. And let's not leave out LaJoy. She's one of our gamers and champions. We have a genealogy game champion here. Welcome, LaJoy Mosley from Central Maryland Logs. Thanks so much for being here. All right, Aaron, I'm going to ask you one more time. You ready to get started with identifying pre-emancipation family? Yay!
Let's do it.
All right, so step one is to find ancestor in 1870 census. So Aaron, can you remind us why this is important?
Well, you know, it's one of the more obvious things, because, you know, after the Civil War in 1865, and where people were actually emancipated in 1862, 3.
I'll say that again.
Wait, and now I'm sort of going, when did emancipation was actually before the end of the Civil War, but it was 62, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
60,
right.
Yeah.
But by 65, so the last federal census in 1860 did not include enslaved people, though there was a separate slave schedule, and we'll look at that as well. But those slave schedules didn't name people, except for this, the enslavers were named. Everybody else just had sex, age, I think that's
gender.
Sex, gender, and age. So, you know, it's important to see in 1870, the first time that people are living freed, you'll start to see either surnames that they assume, that they've chosen, that they've tried on, that they're trying on, that they might change from. But you're getting your first glimpse of them, often your first glimpse, sometimes we'll get earlier glimpses, but you're getting your first certain glimpse of them in freedom after the Civil War.
So I love that. You getting your first glimpse of them in freedom. And we don't want to start from 1880 census and swan dive back. We really want to get back to 1870. So that's step one, get them back there. Step two is to look at the Freedmen's Bureau records. Yay!
Absolutely.
So,
and this is particularly pertinent for this case and this family who lived in Georgia. And so the Freedmen's Bureau records are going to be particularly important in the southern states. So a lot of people, and I'll just point this out really quickly, a lot of people will assume that only southern people are in these records, but that is not true. I've done research on people in New York City and Brooklyn who are named in Freedmen Bureau records because they're doing work in the South. So you can find people from the North in the Freedmen's Bureau records, but they're particularly helpful for Southerners.
most definitely. And people think that they're black records, they're white people.
Oh yeah,
well,
I mean,
so yeah.
yeah, lots of them.
And you have some examples. So where do you find the Freedmen's Bureau records? There's many places. Where your favorite places?
we had a conversation about this, and I realized that I was even mistaken about in our conversation because my source citations says that I found it on Ancestry. So, but I was also in a previous conversation we had talked about. So. I don't know if all the Freedmen's Bureau records are available on Ancestry, but a great deal of them are, and are indexed to some degree. Family Search also. Family Search, full text search in particular, is a way to find them. And now I can't remember, unfortunately, if I found this through Ancestry or through the full text search on Family Search. I don't remember.
So those are the best places
available.
to go. And the Smithsonian, don't forget about the Smithsonian portal. And we're going to see those records. So let's move on to, so you can look in the Freedmen's Bureau records. Step 3 is then to analyze these Freedmen's Bureau records.
So what we'll see, and we'll see it really clearly because we're going to spend a couple of minutes on one record in particular. And one of the things that we'll see is how much indirect information can be pulled out of these records when they're not explicitly saying any of this stuff. Analysis is important.
Very important. Thank you. And so that's step number 3. We'll do I'm glad you're going to have a good analysis time.
Yep.
Step 4 is then to search the 1860 slave schedule for the planter. I love this step because we automatically assume that people are enslavers, and everyone was not necessarily enslaver. So can you tell us where do we find the 1860 slave schedule and some tips on that?
Yeah, so it's also available on Ancestry and Family Search, the typical sites. I will say that at some point, for reasons that remain unclear, the slave schedules were made somehow not as accessible on Ancestry, and I'm not sure about Family Search, but where they used to come up in general searches for at least a time, I don't know if that's still the case now, but for quite some time, they changed some things so that slave schedules were only coming up with special searches. So you had to sort of seek it out, which annoyed me to no end. It makes no sense why they would remove a general access to that. But I have to do a couple of extra things. I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but I found that I have to do a couple of extra things to get there.
Okay.
That is a little disappointing. But it's typically, as far as censuses, I will generally go to Ancestry first because I just find it easier to use.
Same for me.
But then I will often go to Family Search because they have better quality digitization, typically.
Robin was annoyed as well. She
Yeah,
said
I'm
she had the
lucky.
same problem.
Yeah, well, I don't understand it at all.
All right, so we're looking at that slave schedule.
Yes.
We talk more, show you an example of that.
Yeah.
And then you are trying to see, can you connect the
Yeah. So
post-emancipation with the pre-emancipation? So that's the Freedmen's Bureau with the slave record that won't show them necessarily with names. Is that what we're doing?
that's right. So and that's where it's who knows if it's going to work, anytime you do it. You just try, you just see. But it's natural to say, I don't know if natural is the right word, but it's certainly appropriate to look at a Black family's surname in 1870 and say, let me see if I can find the enslaver of the same name. They might have a completely different name, but a lot of them do have the same name. So you start and you just see. You see what's available. You see what you see, and either it clicks or it doesn't, and then you start to put pieces together in certain ways.
And some of what I love about Tony Burrell's book is that Black Roots is it gives you a really cool way to one method to try to figure out which planner it could be by using the 1870 position of your family. And he said search 5 pages forward and 5 pages backwards and write down a list of all the people who were planters. We don't know about the mobility of the person, so it may work,
Right.
it may not work, right, Aaron?
Exactly right, in each particular case. And in other cases, it especially works. But yeah, we'll actually touch on that in this case as well.
Oh, okay. So let's look at some documents. I know everyone's like, get some documents,
Let's pull it up.
Chanel, please.
Okay, so we're looking at Georgia. So I just sort of wanted to generally orient people to what we're looking at here. And Tattnall County and Bullock County are the 2 counties that we are going to be looking at. Chatham County to the east of there, that's the most pointy county to the east. That's where Savannah is, to just give you an idea of where approximately we are. So Bullock and Tattnall County. Tattnall County is where Cobbtown, Georgia is, and it is the home of the of HK Farms, which was named after Handy Kennedy. And this is the family we're going to be looking at.
Okay. I'm sorry I didn't blow this up. You can see those underlying counties, right?
Georgia is one of those states that has a gabillion counties. I think it's literally over 100.
Oh, I love this picture.
Yeah, it's a fantastic picture. So this is actually from the website, obviously, for HK Farms. It operates today, which is one of the things that I love about it. And was established. Now here it says since 1869. So this is also the slide on which I'm going to insert a sub-theme to this little story here. Do yourself a favor and assume that every record you're looking at contains an error. Every one. And in fact, in this case, that will exactly play out. So 1869 is the claim here. So we'll start there, and we can go on. So in this next slide, you'll see the actual family. On the far left there, that man in the lower left-hand corner, that's Handy Kennedy. It's a great name, right?
Yeah.
Handy Kennedy. Now, if you'll see. The farm is named after him, and this shows the first 3 generations. There are actually 5 and I think maybe even 6 generations now that are running the farm. It has continued since. But if you look in the lower left-hand corner now, it says here in the mid-1800s, the legacy began when Handy Kennedy purchased.
Wow.
So already, right, they've backed off from that 1869 claim. I'm not sure where it comes from, but I did note that it was in their logo, so they might feel stuck. Oh, no, it's in our logo. Now what do we do? I don't know, right? But we're working on that. But it's so 1869, this is first generation, the son there, then, okay, so the first 3 generations. And I think we can move on from this. This is the family tree that the family gave me. So this is what they understand to be the case. And you can see Handy Kennedy kind of in the center at the top there, and then his descendants. Now, according to the Handy Kennedy family, you know, the whole farm went just through his line. According to the rest of the family, this was a 3 brothers story.
Okay.
And the 3 brothers story varies according to who you speak to. One of the 3 brothers stories said that there were 3 brothers named Handy Kennedy.
What?
I was quick to point out that was likely not to be the case.
It sounds like George Foreman's family.
It's, you know, it's a little, stranger things have happened, I suppose. But so the broader family is under the impression that 3 brothers, one of which was Handy, actually joined various pieces of land there in Tattnall County to form this farm. And they, it's the rest of the family's belief that they actually did this in pieces and parts, and they kept adding and kept adding and kept adding in these various brothers until they amassed, you know, this larger farm. So part of what I was hired to do was to look at that claim. And then I was also hired because if we can go back to that slide really quickly.
Sure, sure.
The first person who contacted me was underneath Cap Kennedy on that side, on the right side, where it says Cap and Amy. So he actually has a son named Handy as well, as you can see underneath. Then, and it goes down down to Queen Anne and Fred Struthers, then Thelma, blah, blah, blah. So he descended from that line. And so he wanted to both, the broader family wants to understand the origin story, and he wanted to understand if his descent from Cap Kennedy could be corroborated and documented.
Okay.
Okay, and now we can move on. Okay, so this is the 1870 census where I first sort of take a look at what's going on. We've got Captain Kennedy at the bottom there. Cap is Captain Kennedy with Queen. Now on the family tree, it said Amy was his wife. But here it says Queen, but this is 1870. No relationships are stated, right?
Right.
So they may, and they're young. They're 17 and 16. They're young.
Yep.
So they may have been married. They may have not. Don't know. It is notable that the only other person that lived with him was named Collins. So I wouldn't assume that Queen's name was Collins, or that this might have been some other relation. But I would certainly keep my ear open.
Yes. No assumptions in 1870.
No assumptions anywhere. Assume errors everywhere. And at the top, we see Benjamin Kennedy, right? So that was one of the brothers that was one of the brothers. And he's there with a wife and several kids. We don't know from this that they're brothers. We don't know that they're all part of the same family. We can start guessing, but we don't know that at this point.
Right.
But there's Captain, and now what we really want to do is find these brothers together as a family. So we can establish, are they brothers? Are they a family? Exactly how are they related? Blah, blah, blah. That's what we're looking to do here. So here we are with Cap Kennedy at 17 in 1870. Oh, I should point out really quickly, no real estate, right? So the two columns right before Georgia, it says Georgia all the time. The first column is real estate. So neither Benjamin nor Captain had any real estate. Personal estate was 110 for Benjamin. That makes sense. He's 23. Okay, right? 17, he doesn't have any cash savings yet. That's also understandable. But no land. So in 1870, neither of these two people have land. Now, in the Freedmen's Bureau records, one of the things that I find most useful and most informative are the labor contracts.
Yes, love labor contracts.
And I know
Can
we're
you
going to have to
explain
speed
them?
up here. I know we're going to have to speed up, so I'm going to talk fast, I think,
Okay.
and try to shove all this in because they're important. So, shortly after the end of the Civil War, the Freedmen's Bureau established labor contracts. So labor contracts were between generally white people and freedmen who were formerly enslaved, who were now being contracted to do work, often and typically very much like they had been doing. But now there was a contract and there was payment. I almost laugh, and we'll see why. So this was their legal agreement, and each of these contracts would last for a year, and then these contracts would either be renewed or changed or stopped or they moved or whatever. But that's what these contracts are for. We'll take a close look at the details because I think it's important. Well, here we have to, first we have to look at the record. So we find it, and we find this, that this is a labor contract. I'm sorry, I think I'm jumping ahead in my head without saying something. So it's a labor contract between Stephen Kennedy and Jane Kennedy, Ben Kennedy, Cap Kennedy, and then several Kennedys. And then it lists the terms of that agreement, and then some signatures.
Okay, that's what we were looking at on this
Yeah.
labor contract. Okay.
Right, and that's what this is. On the next page, same thing. I just wanted to show where some of the signatures were, and then assigned with X marks. That's not surprising, but there were only 4 signatures. There are more people on there. On the next slide, I think we've got the actual text of this, because that text is hard to read. And this is important. I'm going to read it for 2 reasons. One, because I think a lot of people don't understand the actual differences or lack thereof between being enslaved and being freed, and according to these contracts. And a lot of this was happening in the South. So let's just start quickly. This is an agreement between Stephen Kennedy and Jane Kennedy, Ben Kennedy, Cap Kennedy, Margaret Kennedy, an infant, and Perry Kennedy, Handy Kennedy, freed persons. We're going to analyze that in a second. Of the aforesaid state. Now, this is in Bullock County. So this was a couple of counties away from Tatnall. So where he lived in 1870 is not where this contract was made in 1866. So that's good information to have. It was close, but it was not in the same county. So that's the first thing to notice. And then the terms of the agreement, to wit, the said Jane and Ben and Cap and blah, 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 is to work and labor for the said Stephen Kennedy on his plantation during the year 1866, and to obey all orders and directions of the said Stephen Kennedy that may be reasonable, and to do all kinds of work that may be ordered to do. And Jane is to receive for her compensation good and comfortable quarters and ample clothing, and to be fed on good and wholesome food. Pause there before we continue. Do you hear that? Do you hear that there's no difference whatsoever between enslavement and freedom for her?
Yeah.
Because that's what they had to give people they enslaved.
Yeah.
They were so there's literally no difference for her.
Right.
Continuing on, Ben is to receive for his compensation good and comfortable quarters, ample clothing, to be fed on good and wholesome food, and $25 in good money.
Money.
That tells us something. 2 things, and we'll talk about the analysis of this in a second.
And we have less than 30 seconds.
Okay, so crap. Among the things this says, the fact that Jane's name is first instead of a man's name suggests that she's head of the household that we're looking at, right?
Gotcha.
And so from this, we might hypothesize. We can't know yet. We'll hypothesize she's a mother of all of these kids, Ben
Okay.
Kennedy is the eldest of those kids because he's the only one who's old enough to be paid wages. Jane
Gotcha.
isn't going to be paid wages because she's raising kids and she has her hands full and she's going to do some stuff.
Gotcha.
But Ben Kennedy, as far as Stephen Kennedy is concerned, Ben Kennedy is the one person like worth like paying money for his labor. And then
Gotcha.
Kat and Margaret and her infant and Perry and Handy, all of them also just quarters, clothing, and food. So that means that entire family of 7 people living on $25 for the year, that's all they got paid. And that was the only difference between enslavement and freedom.
And freedom. Not much, but something different. At least they got
And there
paid.
was something
Hold
different.
on.
I shouldn't say that. Not something different.
Aaron,
Right.
talk to us about this in our last
Yes.
30 seconds.
So in the 1860 slave schedule here, you know, they're very sparse in what they give you here. And we go, But I did see that, this is about the same size of that family we just looked at. Can I compare them, and can we perhaps make some identities here? Because this Stephen Kennedy, this wasn't in Bullitt County, which is where the contract was, right?
Yes.
It's 6 years before the contract. So on the next slide, there we go. I wrote out comparing the names from the labor contract and the approximate order, because I did think that there was a birth order. It varies only slightly, but it does vary. And so this is what it looks like here. So using these names and people that we know, we can now approximate who's who and about when they were born. Even though,
I love this.
Right, the first record said nothing about how anybody was related. It said nothing about who was who and how old they were. Nothing about any of that. This says only that and says nothing about names. But by comparing the two of them, you can make these comparisons and go, oh, it looks like this is what's happening. And hypothesis is what I really want to stress here. Nobody is saying, look, this is absolutely the fact. Got it, nailed, not another thing. No, don't do that. This is just a really great hint. And now we're going to continue working forward, follow each of those people and make sure that that actually plays out to be true, or we correct ourselves.
So that's step 6, continue to corroborate findings. Aaron, I'm going to run these steps. We are 2 minutes over.
Oh, I'm so
Identifying a pre-emancipation family. Step 1, find the ancestor in 1870. Step 2, look at the Freedmen's Bureau. Step 3, analyze the Freedmen's Bureau. Step 4, search for the 1860 slave schedule for the planter. Step 5, can you connect the post and the pre-family? And then, of course, Aaron says, continue to corroborate what you have. That is not the end. You have to continue to do things. Aaron, thank you
That's just a quick start.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's just a quick start. And please subscribe. And Aaron, I appreciate you so much. And we hope to see you again. Maybe you and Michael can team up in genealogy games.
We can do that. I'll let you know. We'll do.
All right, we got some music.